if they're just going to go for the basic information and not understand how we got to those answers, they're not going to have the skills they need to succeed in any career today. So critical thinking is really important to success in any endeavor that children might choose as a career path.
We'll talk about this and much more today. Welcome to a Writer's Day podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to a Writer's Day podcast. My name is Ruth Douthit, and I'm an award-winning multi-published author of books in various genres, currently writing suspense. And book 2 in my Desert Shadow Suspense series released in June, and I hope that you're enjoying it. Please leave a review. And my book 3 in my Love and Romance in Italy series is releasing very soon. Head over to my website to sign up for my newsletter so that you can know what the cover looks like and what the title is. And the pre-order link is coming soon, so stay tuned. And if you like today's episode, please consider leaving a review or subscribing and following me. I'd love to know what you think of today's episode of A Writer's Day. Okay, let's get started. Barbara Mojica is here with me today. She is a seasoned educator and children's nonfiction author. Wow, isn't that neat? And she's well known for her Little Miss History book series, and she's going to be talking today about the latest release in this series. So you know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, a comfortable chair, kick back and relax as we learn more about Barbara and her newest book in the Little Miss History series. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so excited to have an author who's new to me, but perhaps you've heard of her, Barbara Mojica. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm very happy to be here today. Thanks for the invite.
Of course. Well, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about your newest book.
Okay, well, in order to understand how I became a writer, I've got to go back a little bit. So I have a lot of hats. I'm a parent, a grandparent, an educator with 40 years experience working with children of all kinds, both general population and special needs. And by academic training, I'm a historian. So when I retired from my formal career as a teacher and administrator, I decided I wanted to combine my two passions and write about them. So I combined my love of history with my love of education and working with children. And I decided to write a series of nonfiction history books for children. And when I decided to do that, which was not very long after I retired, I could tell that I was not going to be the sit around the house type. So my husband came up with a great idea to help the production and the setup of the books. He said, well, why don't I create a fun character to help you narrate the books? Because I wanted to make the books educational, but also entertaining and inspirational for children. So he created the Little Miss History character, who is a cartoon version of a younger me. My husband was an artist. He's been drawing since the age of 5, and he's done work in the industry in both children's books, comic books, illustration, and lots of other things. So he created this character, Little Miss History, and she wears rose-colored glasses because she has an optimistic outlook on the world. She wears this hiking, camping outfit because she's a world traveler and explorer. And myself, I was always interested in traveling, and I did a lot of traveling and hiking in the younger me version. But he made her a funny creation. So my idea was also to let kids see a version of themselves that they could identify with as well. And immerse themselves in the story, because my idea is to get children not only to learn about the subject that I'm discussing with them, but to become critical thinkers and to become very interactive. I ask them questions as to how they would solve problems and what do they think of different incidents and people in the stories. So that's how the book series came about. Little Miss History Travels to Alaska is the most recent of my books, but there are actually 17 books in the series, and
Mm,
I've been
wow.
writing them since 2013.
Wow. 13 books in the series. That's fantastic. Now, when I was a teacher too, and I realized at about third grade that I wanted to be a teacher. When did you realize that you wanted to become an educator?
Oh, not until later on. When I was very young, I wanted to be an airline stewardess,
Oh.
and I changed my mind lots and lots of times. But when I graduated college and finished graduate school, I came out with a history degree, and I decided I didn't want to become part of that kind of ivory tower, just straight research person. I
Mm,
wanted to teach, and I thought at first that maybe I wanted to teach older children, either in high school and college, but I always loved younger kids.
mhm,
So I started teaching elementary age children, and I wound up sticking to that for a very long time until I became kind of disillusioned with the educational system and all the problems that are going on with it today as a teacher and later on as an administrator.
mm,
So I switched to special education, and I started to investigate the way children would learn best. And I even worked with severely disabled children. So that gave me a much broader perspective
mhm,
on education. And I used that perspective in what I learned about how we need to tailor education to each individual child. I
mhm,
use that in my books. So that's also a part of my platform. I want to help parents uh, to raise the best kids that they can, the most happy and successful kids that they can. And that's
mm.
part of my mission in the books as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. So what is it about history, though, as a subject that, enticed you to become a historian?
Well, I always loved meeting different people, even though I was a very shy, kind of introverted person when I was younger. I was always enthused about people, specifically people who were very, very curious and who were looking to find out about places that were beyond their reach. So I was always interested in the explorers and how they were able to travel the globe and discover new worlds and new places. So that was part of it. But when I was younger, history was taught in school at a much earlier age than it is today. Today, really, there isn't much history in schools until high school, and what they might call history is more what is in the realm of social studies.
Hmm.
So it's more social skills, and we don't teach geography and history separately anymore. We just kind of mush everything together. And there's not enough of it, in my opinion, because I think history is one of the best disciplines for teaching children how to think,
Hmm.
because when you study history, you are trying to get at the truth of the matter. When some people hear history, they think of dates and facts, but that's not history. History is investigating the truth, trying to
Hmm.
find out what really happened. And in order to do that, you have to do critical thinking. You have to ask those who, what, when, where questions,
Mm-hmm.
And our schools don't emphasize that today. They emphasize teaching to the test and, coming up to an arbitrary standard, everybody doing it the same way, and not really encouraging children to use those open-ended questions to learn about the world around them. And I think that's so important in developing leadership skills in children too, because if they're just going to go for the basic information and not understand how we got to those answers, they're not going to have the skills they need to succeed in any career today. So critical thinking is really important to success in any endeavor that children might choose as a career path in the future.
Mm. I so agree. And I've had a couple of friends who are, one is a retired history teacher, middle school, and then high school, and then a teacher who currently teaches middle school social studies, as you said, but she really does teach history. She loves to talk about, like you said, the who and the what and the why and the when parts of it. And one thing I love about both of these teachers, and you'll probably agree, is they would do the simulations in their classroom so that the students had an opportunity to really feel like they were part of history.
Yes,
And
exactly. And that's
yeah.
one of the reasons I decided to major in history was a fantastic teacher in high school.
Mm,
She would just bounce around the room and just draw everybody into the
yeah.
situation and the people and what they were doing and why they were doing it. So that was a great influence for me. In fact, I even dedicated one of my books to her.
Oh.
And I think that once kids are able to see history not as a series of facts or arbitrary events, but able to see history as what helps us to understand how we got to where we are today and how we can use that information to create a better tomorrow. So
Mm,
I encourage children to see themselves as characters in history because we all create our own history.
mm,
Everyone, everything, every discipline has a history. So if you explain it that way to kids, they become a lot more excited and see themselves as creating their own story and using what we already know from other people and other experiences to help
mm-hmm,
us understand how to negotiate our own life story and the journey we have coming ahead.
mm. That's so true. And I love that you're inspired by a teacher. One of the best teachers I ever had was a history teacher. And I went back to school in my 30s and decided to take US history first, just to see if I wanted to go back full time and finish my degree. And he was a brilliant storyteller. And I think that's
Mhm.
kind of segues into what you were saying, is that he would just sit down with his notebook in front of him and he'd say, there was this young man and he lived da 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 da. And he would just tell this amazingly detailed story. And we're all just staring at him. Yeah, yeah, what happened next? And he would tell us about the successes and the failures this young man had. And then at the very end of his story, he would say, and that young man's name was Abraham Lincoln. And we went, wow, I mean, he told us things we didn't know about him. And that's what so many history teachers, the really good ones, the effective ones, do, is they draw you in and make you realize you had so much in common with these people who, founded our country or fought in great battles or discovered new territories. And they come to life, and they make you realize, wow, I could probably do some of those things too. It really inspires you.
And we it's important to understand that they weren't these perfect, heroic,
Mm,
idealistic people, but they were human just as we were. And we learn a lot more sometimes from our
mm,
failures and our mistakes than we do from our successes. And it's important for kids to see that and to understand that. And they think, well, hey, I'm not perfect and I'm not exceptional, but just like this person, I could grow up to do exceptional things. So I think that that's a very, very good point.
Well, now let's talk about your newest book, Little Miss History Travels to Alaska. Tell us about this story.
Okay, well, this story is one of my history books that uses a common place that some children might visit with their families or might aspire to visit one day. I think Alaska is so interesting because it is such a large place, first of all. It's twice the size of Texas, yet, it has only approximately 730,000 people living in this
Mhm.
huge state. And it is a place of so many contrasts and so many people of diverse types and animals and scenery of diverse types that really would draw you in. So I think it's a place that children would identify with wanting to visit. So that's one of the criteria I use in choosing my books. Some of them are very familiar historical sites like the Statue of Liberty or Mount Rushmore. Others are more travel oriented, but they involve a lot of interesting history as well. So if a family were to go on a trip to Alaska, they might commonly visit through a cruise. So this book is
Mhm.
based on the parts of Alaska that are along the inland passage. And there are a lot of different types of places that are visited. So we look at Sitka, we look at Haines, we look at the capital Juneau, we look at Icy Strait Point, which is called Huna, because it is a community that is actually governed and run by one of the native populations in Alaska, the Tlingit, and the entire island is governed by them. Now, all of these places have fantastic history. So if you go to one of the places is Skagway, so that's an old mining town. So it was founded because of a gold rush. Gold was discovered there, and it was one of these very rough towns. But when you walk into the town, you can see the majestic mountains. You can take a ride on a railway that existed because it was built by the miners, a narrow gauge railway, which is really exciting to ride on something that is over 100 years old, just as if you were riding in, an old steam engine. You can go to Sitka and uh, the history of Alaska, of course, involves Russia because Russia originally owned Alaska. And in Sitka, you can go to the site where Russia was sold to America. And of course, everyone made fun of it because, they called it sewage folly. It was an ice box that was never going to be worth anything. And there in Sitka, they can visit and learn about the Russians and how they interacted, sometimes very negatively, with the natives that were there. All of the all of these towns have wonderful museums and sites that reflect the native heritage as well as the heritage today. So if you go to Juneau, which is another one of the sites here in the book, Juneau is the capital, yet it is also a center of politics and native culture. So in the museums, you can see the costumes that the natives wore and then very frequently still wear today. You can see the influences of their culture you can you can read about their legends. You go to Ketchikan and you can see the totem poles, which are that's something of great interest to most kids. They see how the poles were carved and are still being carved today to reflect the legends of the native people and how the expert woodwork is done. They can visit and see the salmon running in the rivers. They can see the whales jumping off the shore. And this whole area of the Inland Passage is a tropical rainforest. But it's not kind of tropical rainforest that you think of when you go to the Amazon. It's actually temperate. So it has a temperate climate, but it is a rainforest. And in a place like Ketchikan, you better bring your umbrella because it rains 160 days of the year.
These are all things I had no idea. I had no idea there were museums in all these little towns and all these fun
And for
facts.
most of them, yeah, most of them you can get there by getting in your car and taking a ride. Haines is the only town that has a highway system. To
Oh,
visit the other towns, you have to travel there by boat or plane. So
oh,
if you go to these towns, you will often see little airplanes docked as seaplanes in the water. And that's the way you get around. So even in Juneau, you have to reach Juneau, the capital, by sea or by air.
wow. That
You,
is so
you
neat.
can't
It really
travel.
brings, Alaska to life because there's more to Alaska than just a cruise, right? So I think
Oh,
that's
oh
great.
yeah. But this is the way that a lot of people visit Alaska today. So I chose this way because it's a way to present so many different towns and scenarios that life in
Yeah.
Alaska might bring. You could see the glaciers. You could, and of course, uh, Alaska butts next to Canada too. So
Hmm.
it's very easy to take a little side trip and you find yourself over the border in Canada. So
Oh,
it's an interesting place that I think a lot of kids
hmm.
um, would love to find out about, would love to visit, if not in the near future, somewhere later on as they are adults. So
Yeah.
this one is an example of the type of book that not only talks about history, uh, but it talks about geography, it talks about politics, it talks about culture. And in all of my books, I also ask children about things like that. I present facts and people that may not be as well known
Hmm.
to them as would be presented in a general book on the subject. And I want them to be encouraged to go off and to explore more. So I try to provide different avenues that kids might be interested in and might want to just do some more investigation on their own. So even if I'm doing a book on a historical site like Mount Rushmore, might talk about the issue of Native American rights and how the land for Mount Rushmore was taken from the Lakota Sioux and how that was an injustice because originally they were told that they could have this land and then it was taken back from them. So the Native Americans today are building Mount Crazy Horse nearby, and they are building their own monument to their leader. And it's going to
Wonderful.
be huge. It's taken years and years, and it's nowhere near finished.
Sure.
And they do not take government funding, or it's all being done privately.
That's
And so
fascinating.
we talk about Native American rights in the UN, and what do kids think about it, and do they
Yeah.
have any ideas to come up with solutions? So in any book that I do, I will also pose questions. I'll bring up people that they probably never heard of, like Alonzo Swan in World War II, and how he protected with his small battery of African American gunners, because at that time the troops were segregated, prevented the ship from sinking due to a kamikaze attack. And for years, he wasn't given the proper acknowledgement that he should have
Mm,
been. But after
yeah.
50 years, he was finally awarded the highest honor from the Navy. And
Oh,
we
wow.
talk about people in the that Lincoln knew that the kids wouldn't have heard of,
Sure.
uh, and in all of the books, different things that are important to know, people
Yeah.
that might have been forgotten. So again, people like themselves who might not have been big names in history, but who also contributed
Yeah.
immensely.
They played a big part. Well, it sounds like this is a great series for educators and homeschool parents. And so is Little Miss History Travels to Alaska out in the world right now?
Oh yes, all of the books, all 17 of them are on Amazon.
Hmm,
They're on Barnes and Noble. They're on IndieBound and in independent bookstores,
great.
um, and they're available worldwide. So it's easy
Great.
to access them. I love to visit kids in person. So when I can, I like to do book festivals and book
Sure.
signings and school visits, and really get involved, with the kids one-on-one,
Sure.
and get
That's a
their
great,
perspective.
yeah, that's a great opportunity to make history come alive. Well, Barbara, this has been so much fun to talk about your series and history and how you're so inspirational. And so I hope that a lot of folks out there listening grab these books, and especially the educators out there and homeschool parents, take a look at them. They're really fascinating, and it's a fun way to make history come alive for kids. So thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your series.
Thank you. I really enjoyed visiting with you.
That was remarkable to listen to Barbara Mojica talk about her new book, Little Miss History Travels to Alaska. What a fun book series, especially for you educators out there. I was inspired. I hope you were inspired to keep going on your writing journey, and because you have a story to tell and you have lives that you can impact with your story. And those of you who write nonfiction, stick with it. This was a great idea to make a subject come alive for kids. And you can pick up Barbara's books on Amazon today and head over to her website to learn more about her. And it sounds like she has all these extra resources too for educators. Bottom line, keep going on your writing journey, because someone out there needs to read your story and may be inspired by your story. So thanks for listening. And until next time, God bless.